Welcome. Thank you for coming. I know this is the first session the day after conference party, so it's not always heavily packed, but thank you for coming. My name is Chmarny. I'm one of the serverless technical program managers looking after serverless at Google.
And I'm Tomas Isdal. I'm engineering manager at Google.
How many of you have been here a year ago when we did the introductory or the announcement of Knative launch? Good numbers, but we have also a fair amount of new faces, and I think that speaks to some of the exciting momentum in the community around Knative. So we will have a few slides kind of talking about the momentum of the project and the kind of growth of the community, and definitely want to dedicate some time on the end to questions, because usually these kind of sessions spark a fair amount of those. So the session is called Knative a year later, but reality is really just been 9 months. There's magic of conference scheduling that happens there. And what an exciting and very fun ride that has been for us. And I think just watching from the announcements to the growth has been really, really good. So a year ago, just a little flashback for those of you who have not been here. A year ago, we talked about the fact that already then, in fact, probably even before then, Kubernetes was the de facto platform for running containers at a lot of different places. Like at that point, it was already hard to find cloud service provider that was not offering Kubernetes as a service at that time. And that speaks to the kind of proliferation of that platform everywhere. We also, at the time when we started kicking off thinking about Knative, we're looking across the community and we saw, the number is 13 here, but frankly, who knows how many there really were out there, different projects that were focused on building serverless offering or serverless platform on top of Kubernetes in an open source community. And the interesting part was that they were focusing a lot of attention on very complex and kind of, to some degree, almost boring problems that had to be addressed with regards to running inside of Kubernetes for different types of workloads that Kubernetes was originally designed for. So in addition to kind of trying to solve some of the user experience, they had to address the building of images, the routing, managing the scaling and stuff like that, stuff that was not really exposed to the user. In a process of doing that, in a process of really building all these new platforms, because if you ask 4 engineers to do something, there'll be 5 different ways to do it. They end up building very hard to reproduce or non-portable solutions that were hard to leverage for the community. Not only they were decreasing the portability of those projects by working together on the same set of problems, they were also, given that the resources, the engineering resources are limited, they were not investing a lot of attention towards areas that the developer actually could benefit from. So the overall experience, the new event sources, the different runtimes, and so forth. So at Last Next, we announced Knative as an open source, set of open source building blocks for building a serverless solution on Kubernetes. And I stress the building blocks because initially we were really focusing on make sure that each one of those can be used independently to allow developers to build products for their developers. The initial set of work was around Knative buildings, eventing, and serving. So let's kind of look where we are today. Today, I'm happy to announce that not only those building blocks have been very successful and continue evolving, but there's now a series of commercial offerings that are based on top of Knative building blocks. Different companies that they're listed over here, including you might have heard this week about the exciting launch of Cloud Run and Cloud Run on GKE that we have talked about over here. But in addition to that, there's a number of other commercial offerings, both as a service and as a product that different companies use the components that Knative enables to build their offerings on top of Kubernetes. So let's go quickly and just overview where we are today. I think what I'm talking about here is a set of features and capabilities that we provide that were available in a 0.5 release of Knative, which landed just this week. And in fact, there is a blog that was published this morning that you can kind of get a quick update on what new features, specifically around eventing, that were added over there. But in area of serving, what are the benefits for developer? The first of all, and the one that we hear the most about, is the notion of auto-scaling, being able to scale your application and respond to unpredictable usage patterns. So no longer thinking about what my size of my audience is going to be or going in manually adding nodes, but having that solution or the system that you're building on top using Knative automatically scale and address the demand. But also, when that demand is no longer there, being able to scale to zero and allow you to use the resources in your Kubernetes cluster for other work that might be important at that time. So really greatly benefiting the overall utilization of the cluster. The other important part that we talk about a lot of times is the notion of snapping both the configuration and the code at the same time and being able to reliably use it for individual deployments, which is great because you write all perfect code, but when I have a bug, I sometimes need to go roll back to previously known state or some version that I know actually works. So being able to manage revisions and configuration as unit is critical for that. Knative, it comes with a very powerful tool underneath, is the Istio mesh network, sometimes it can be pretty complex for developers, so Knative exposes that as a set of very simple set of APIs that allows you to manage things like request path access control or being able to expose certain metrics from that Istio mesh, but not being able to, have to force you to configure this manually, which can be complex at times. And there's a number of other features. The other part about Knative serving is that it's very pluggable. And what we mean by that is that in case of Google, what we've done is when we built a Knative compatible service, the Cloud Run on GKE and Cloud Run, we can integrate with native services that are offered on GCP that offer things like building, so you can build source code all the way to container or Stackdriver or other services for data persistence and analytics. In addition to that, it's also extendable. So we've talked about a number of partners. The two I want to highlight over here is GitLab. I think we have a session later today that will highlight one of their demos that use continuous deployment and integration demonstration of how they connect to the Knative APIs, as well as Datadog for some of the metrics that you can do as an alternative to Stackdriver. So exciting things in serving. In build, from the very beginning, Knative was able to produce offer reproducible builds. And that sounds very simple, but when you think about being able to reliably, sorry, it's morning, so I'm struggling with English, reliably build images from the same code, including things like timestamps and others that give you the same image over and over again, is something that I think if you've done some builds yourself before, you'll quickly realize it's not easy. The other thing that Knative Build provides is a series of pipelines or different language optimized frameworks that can be used to build directly from source and either result in an image that then you manually deploy or actually help you go all the way from source to URL, to live active URL. All of that is done on a cluster, so there is no need for Docker locally. There is no need for cross-compiling. So if you're working on a Mac or Windows and you need to build an image that's going to run on Linux, which Knative runs today on, you don't have to deal with those. Remember all the extra flags and how to do that. And some of the languages, dynamic language, for example, might have to benefit from that too. And because this is running as a service, is running on the cluster, is running on top of Kubernetes, you're benefiting from a lot of the elasticity and being able to use the resources when you need them and dedicated those resources to something else when you don't. Again, loosely coupled, you will see that theme across every one of the components of Knative. So in this case, it integrates with a number of different CI/CD tools. I think if you've attended the Cloud Run solutions yesterday, I demonstrated a cloud build integration. We have Jenkins eggs and a number of others, including a new foundation that will launch specifically to kind of focus on that leverages the Knative project originally launched in Knative, is the continuous build foundation. And there's a growing number of enterprise tools that are kind of popping up here that provide some very specific set of features for enterprise use cases, like policy management, logging, and so forth. So again, so serving, build, and last but not least, always eventing for some reason ends up on the end. I don't know why that's the case. We need to flip the order sometimes. So eventing, super exciting set of add-ons in a 0.5 release that we just launched this week, kind of adding to the very primitive set of objects that we have had underneath, and adding some easier to use constructs like broker and trigger that developers can easily just use by leveraging some of the defaults that Knative already expose. What Knative eventing does by default is helps you really orchestrate the event sources and events both on the cluster as well as off the cluster. It provides a very declarative way of binding to event sources and connecting them to either directly some consumer of those sources, but also building very complex set of pipelines that you can. And those little pipelines get more interesting and interesting as people get creative with how you can leverage those capabilities. Because it runs on Knative, and it's not just a brand new set of things, it just leverages the Knative architecture and components, you're getting the exact same scalability and auto-scaling capabilities that you've seen in serving. So you can build things that are very nominal in a resource utilization when you first deploy them and you use them, but being automatically address a larger number of events when you need to. And all of that is based with regards to transport on standards, cloud events for kind of packaging the events. So what that means is that we are able to attach ourselves to a number of other different projects and event sources that generate events in this new open standard for events. Again, loosely coupled or extendable. So you can bind to existing event sources. There's probably 28, 23 or something like that of different, I know I went down, I should have gone down. The list grows all the time, and you can see that full list of existing event sources that you don't have to build, you can just consume on Knative website. But we also provide a very easy way of extending those. And there is a whole session later today, SRV 305, that you can come to that's dedicated explicitly to the new eventing sources. And Vila is going to talk about the new business object models, hopefully not business, and share some of the hands-on way of building new event sources. All right, so that was about the capabilities of Knative. Let's talk about community. Frankly, we could not have done this ourselves, and there is a pretty fascinating community already behind Knative, starting with the launch partners 9 months ago. So let's overview. Today, again, 0.5 already landed. Our community has 49, 50, I think more now since yesterday. These numbers are probably from Friday, I think. 50 different companies that are contributing to Knative, over 3.7 thousand different pull requests. The number of contributors, and what I mean by contributors is not only people who write code, but also people who review code, people who write documentation, 400 plus of those. The one interesting number here is also we have now spun up 9 different work groups. So these are kind of specific area interest groups that are like, you know what, I cannot understand the entire Knative, but in the area of auto-scaling, I think I can contribute, and I can be a valuable resource. And people from a number of different companies, including those who never write code that's contributed to Knative, come in and join us on that. The number that I am most interested about, though, probably most proud of, is that the momentum, it wasn't just when we launched it. It continued being sustained. So I built this kind of 20% month-over-month number by aggregating the pull requests, the issues, the comments, the Slack channel participation, workgroup participation, just seeing this line growing. Tomas is going to talk a little later about what that means in engineering terms. It's just fascinating. All right. The other interesting number with regards to community is that, yeah, Google was there in the beginning and some of their launch partners, and we are extremely thankful for those partners and their participation in that. But the long tail of companies that are now contributing to Knative is something that speaks to the health of the project. 1/5 of all contributions to Knative are done by the broad community, people who have less than 15 different PRs, I think, at this point. There's a link to a live stats, so these numbers change all the time. You can look it up. But that's just fascinating that this long tail of contributors drives really the momentum, because different companies getting involved in this project means that the number of use cases that they addressed is also growing, and that drives features back into Knative, which speaks further to the capabilities that we can do with this. I'm going to hand it to Tomas to talk about engineering.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mark. Super exciting to see so many companies contribute to the system. And I think it speaks to how useful these small primitives that we have built, how useful these companies find these primitives. We see a lot of momentum in Knative, and we talked a lot about open source, but we see this in customer growth. We see this in partners launching services on top of Knative, and we see it in the number of contributors to the project and the amount of code they write. So just in the last quarter, we had 228 people contributing to Knative. And these folks wrote over 1,500 PRs. That's 5 times more than what we had in Q2 2018. So amazing growth. My team at Google, we're writing a lot of this, around 61%. And we plan to continue investing in Knative to keep this acceleration going into next year. But as an engineering manager, you know that just writing a bunch of code is not enough to have a healthy open source project. There's a lot of other things you have to do. So what we have done as well is to grow up as an open source community. We have created a steering committee that's in charge of the overall health and long-term sustainability of the project. And we have recently invited non-Google members to the steering committee. This is how we create a robust ecosystem. It can't be a single vendor when we have 50 companies that are partnering for a shared goal. We have a technical oversight committee that's doing a similar thing from a technical perspective. Other things that we have done is related to this promise of portability. We want to make sure that code you write for Knative will work, of course, on Cloud Run, but it also works in Knative open source in your own data center or on a competitor. And the way we do this is to clearly define the expectations of the system and have tests that verify that the implementations meet those specifications. I also want to highlight that we have software engineers working on Knative, but we also have folks working on test infrastructure, documentation, samples, etc. I'm really proud about how solid the engineering work is on Knative and how good our releases are. My team knows that I'm a stickler for flaky tests. I really don't like flaky tests. And for a long time, we had 0% flaky tests, which wasn't true because it rounded down. So it was actually 0.04% test flakes. But it was still what you need. If we have 200 people from 50 companies contributing code, and you want to have any reassurance that that code actually works, you need to have a really solid test infrastructure. And that's something we have invested in a lot. Similarly, we have a team writing documentation and samples so that your developers at your companies can read how to get started with Knative from a developer point of view and from a contributor point of view. So what do we get with 400 contributors and 4,000 pull requests? Well, we have done a lot over the last year. It's pretty incredible to think that just a year ago, less than a year ago, is when we briefed a few partners under NDA at KubeCon in Copenhagen. And 9 months ago, we launched at Cloud Next. And we got a lot of excitement, which is great. We were super excited to see that we hit the nerve. A lot of people had been thinking about the same thing, and they wanted someone to come in and really rally the community around the shared goal. But we also got a lot of criticism. And that's even better, because that means that people care about what you're doing. And we took this criticism to heart. So we spent quite a lot of time between 0.1 and 0.2 to re-architect the system to make it more flexible and more pluggable so that partners can fit this into the environment where they're working. So at 0.2, we sort of had the foundation in place to have something really useful. And the project shifted at that point from addressing partner needs, infrastructure needs, architecture, to addressing customer needs. And we saw that in 0.3. We added support for the container resource spec, and this is largely driven by requests for GPUs and TPUs. A lot of people want to run machine learning models or machine learning serving on Knative, and GPUs make that a lot cheaper. People wanted to run private Knative services, so we added support for private or public services, so you can do, depending on your front end is open to the public, your back end is hidden, and you don't want that to be accessible to the broad internet. And of course, improved auto-scaling, improved scale to 0, all those things. At this point, we also changed our release model. So we're now, every 6 weeks, cutting a new release. And that's how we get features out to customers quickly. Of course, bug fixes, security fixes goes out every week, but major changes goes out every 6 weeks. And this allows us to take feedback from customers. So in 0.4, the feedback had shifted a little bit. From 0.3 was, OK, we can't do what we need to do. 0.4 was, hey, I'm running Knative. And it turns out that upgrading to the next version of Knative, which, by the way, you now have to do every 6 weeks, is really annoying. It takes a lot of time. So we spent a lot of time between 0.3 and 0.4 to make that into a seamless experience for people running on top of Knative. And also because we run Knative services ourselves, Cloud Run and GKE and Cloud Run. And we want to make sure that those systems can upgrade smoothly as well. We also added more support for things we hear from enterprises. They are really careful about how they manage secrets for how they authenticate to other services. Kubernetes has support for this. We forwarded the support into Knative. Similarly, once you start architecting a system with a front end and private backends, you want to have a really efficient communication channel. So we added support for HTTP2 and gRPS. So gRPC, sorry. So that you can have this efficient communication channel between your microservices. And now, just last week, we cut it, announced it today, 0.5, gRPC streaming, and then a big overhaul in eventing. So really, really huge improvements there. 1.15 today, we're going to do a deep dive into Knative eventing, and I really recommend that session. So I'm going to invite Ryan Gregg up on stage, and he's going to talk about how you can use Knative on Google Cloud to make your developers more productive for your business.
Good morning. Oh, hey, cool. So I'm Ryan Gregg. I'm a product manager on the serverless team at Google. And this week, we were really excited to announce the launch into beta for both Cloud Run and Cloud Run on GKE. Yeah, come on, let's everybody wake up a little bit here. There we go. All right. I'm not below begging for people to applaud for me. Last year, when I announced Knative, I got applause for building Hello World in Docker. So like, I'm all out there for it. So Cloud Run and Cloud Run on GKE, these are our managed Knative offerings. And Cloud Run is a fully managed serverless platform for running containers on Google's serverless infrastructure. So you get the Knative API, you get the Knative runtime contract, but you don't have to worry about the cluster or any of the implementation details under the covers, or even what version of Knative you're running. You just get to call the API, deploy a container, and go. And the best part about Cloud Run is that it's pay for use. You only have to pay for the time that the request is being processed, and the rest of the time when we scale the service down, or even if we don't, it's free. Cloud Run on GKE gives you a lot more flexibility, though. It's actually running the Knative open source components along with some additional work on top of your Kubernetes engine cluster. So you can go in and use the Knative API to deploy workloads. You can use the great UI and CLI that we offer through gCloud and through Cloud Console. Or you can go into the API and do all the Kubernetes stuff that you're used to being able to do. You can access the Knative API directly. You can program Istio under the covers to add policies to the workloads that you're deploying. And you can take advantage of the additional resources that are available in GKE, like more memory, more CPU types, GPUs and TPU accelerators, all the greatness of compute that is available on Kubernetes Engine. And then, of course, you can use Knative anywhere. So in addition to the managed products through Anthos, our on-prem offering, and on basically any Kubernetes cluster anywhere, of course, you can run Knative and have a great story for being able to use our serverless experience across all three environments. So wherever you go, you can have a great serverless experience. We also have a bunch of customers who have been using this in the alpha program, and it's been really exciting to see the workloads that they have built. For example, we worked with Airbus Aerial to do an alpha test on Cloud Run on GKE, and they use it for doing real-time processing of imagery that comes from drones, airplanes, and satellites to help understand the impact to disaster areas and be able to respond quickly. And they're really excited about the way that the serverless platform scales because, as it turns out, you can't really predict when natural disasters are going to happen, and you need to be able to respond really quickly and have the infrastructure scale up underneath it. And with Cloud Run and Cloud Run on GKE, they really saw some great benefits for being able to respond to natural disasters when they occurred. So those are our two different ways of running managed Knative on top of Google Cloud. We're really excited to see what everybody's going to be building on top of them, in addition to how you continue to use the Knative open source project. Thanks, Thomas. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
Thanks. Really exciting to see that. To summarize what we talked about so far, so Mark started by talking a little bit about what Knative does and how it can make your developers more productive. Then we talked a little bit about the broad uptake in the open source community and how we're trying to foster a really healthy, long-term, sustainable community for Knative. I talked a little bit about what we did last year, and I want to just give a hint of what we see happening in the immediate future for Knative. So we just cut 0.5. And 0.5 is a great milestone, but the real important milestone is 1.0. That's when people can put their mission-critical, business-critical logic on top of Knative. And quite honestly, we're not there just yet. So where I see the team going and the community going is that we really need to double down on get to 1.0. What we have right now is super useful. It has enough functionality to be a really viable product. But we don't really have the performance and stability just yet that you can put your 1.0 brand behind. The other thing we need to focus on is to get an API that we're comfortable standing behind for years. We have made some changes throughout the last year based on customer feedback. That's why you have a 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, right? We're bringing those changes in, and we have a really focused working group right now to get the 1.0 API draft out. And if you're interested in contributing, we really value feedback in these working groups. And they're open to the public. And if you go to our GitHub page, you can see how you can join these meetings. I touched a little bit on specifications. And the broader term there, I would call it conformance. Ryan was talking about Knative Anywhere. That only works if we have a robust set of conformance and conformance tests that we can run to make sure that this Knative deployment is conformant with the Knative standard. That's a big focus for the team. If you really love writing tests, we have work for you.
Who does?
Just ping me, and I'll send you a bunch of tests to write. So these are things that we're doing. Of course, we're going to continue to address customer feedback. We're going to continue to add features. But that's not the biggest focus in the project right now. The biggest focus is to get to 1.0, because in my mind, that's when the fun starts. That's when people start using your things. That's when you have the big customer growth. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to help other people be more productive in their business. And that doesn't really happen until we get to GA and 1.0. So we talked a little bit about, last year we were saying that Kubernetes was becoming the de facto platform for running containers. And last year, Knative didn't exist. But I hope now, through the keynotes and the samples and the products that Google has launched, plus the 5 other products other cloud providers have launched, we have convinced you that Knative is becoming the de facto platform for running serverless on Kubernetes. With that, we have a little bit of time. Oh, yeah. We have talked a lot about Knative. I highlighted a few sessions here. We mentioned that there's a Knative eventing, SVR 305, coming this afternoon at 1:15 p.m. These other sessions will be available on YouTube to watch in case you missed them. We're at the tail end of the conference, so it's too late to go through them now. But you can watch them at YouTube. I recommend double speed. It's the way to do it.
When we talk, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much. This is how you can contact us. Please join the open source community. You can be one of 1,000 people in our Slack channel. It's beautiful. And thank you so much for all of the people in the room who might have contributed and the industry partners that have partnered with us to make this successful.
And now with Cloud Run, now with Cloud Run being generally available to everybody, you can easily just take it for a spin.
Beta available to the public.
It's easily available on GCP, yes. It's not generally available.
It's available, yeah.
There you go. You can easily try it. How about that? Using this Cloud Run URL there.